Hi, and welcome back to Jeannine Crafts. Today I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful beaded star ring. It's got 3 layers of stars and just a pretty gold bead in the center, and I just used some stretch cord and some seed beads to make the band for the ring. For the band I used size 6/0 seed beads, and then for the star I used size 11/0 seed beads in 5 different colors for the star points or petals, and then some gold seed beads for the tips. But for the purpose of this video and to show you how I made the ring, I'm going to be doing it all with these size 6/0 seed beads, because it'll be easier for you to see my work than it would be for me to show you with the seed beads. Anyway, so this is one variation where all the petals line up and are stacked on top of each other, and this is a different variation where I kind of staggered them so they were separated, and it gives the top of the ring the look of more fullness to do it this way. So it's just really a matter of aesthetic, and I'll explain to you how to do the variation while I'm working. And as a base for the ring, I just used the gold seed beads in a circular brick stitch to make a base for the ring. To do the circular brick stitch, the first thing we're going to do is get our string loaded. Oh, and for a string, I'm just using a monofilament line, but you can use whatever type of beading string that you're comfortable with. On this one, to make the base, I used a silk thread, and then I used beading wire to do the petals, and then a stretchy cord for the band. But anyway, you work with whatever you're comfortable with. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and load 2 beads. And because in this video I'm going to be working with one continuous string, so I made it fairly long. I've got probably a couple of yards of string here. So I'm going to come back through the first bead, and we have the first stitch in our brick stitch now. And as I pull my string tight, I'm going to make sure that the beads line up side by side like this. And I'm going to go back through bead 2. Again, just holding the beads in the brick, and they're not cooperating, but attempt to hold them side by side, and pick up bead number 3. And again, I'm going to try and find a bead that's fairly close to the same size and shape. And what we're doing is building our ladder to attach the next beads to. And so I'm going to go back through bead number 2. And then back up through bead number 3. And it's looking a little bit like a herringbone at the moment, but when we pull it into a circle, everything's going to come together. So I'm going to pick up bead number 4. Go back up through bead number 3. And back down through bead number 4. And we have one more bead to add to our base, or our first row of beads. We need 5 beads in the first row, 10 beads in the second row, and 15 beads in the third row. And that's going to set up our base for a 5-petal flower or 5-pointed star. Okay, now we've got all 5 beads on. And these are not wanting to sit next to each other properly. So I'm going to go back to bead 1 and go through it and pull these into a circle. Okay, so you can see I've pulled them into a circle, and the important thing with making the base is when you get them into the circle is to make sure that all the holes are pointed outward, because you need these bridges to attach your other beads to. So now that I've got it pulled into a circle, what I need to do is finish it and build this last bridge between these 2 beads. So I've got my thread coming out of here, and so I'm going to go back into bead 1 and then back through the last bead and keep the tail out of the way. Okay, and I'm going to go through it one more time just to secure that stitch. Let's make sure we've got a nice strong bridge there. Okay, so now we're going to pick up 2 beads and we're going to start our second row. And for the second row, you're going to put, for every bridge, there should be 5 bridges, the little threads that come up over the beads like that. So we're going to do, for the second row, we're going to do 2 beads per bridge, and that'll give us the 10 beads that we need. So I've got those 2 beads loaded, and I'm going to take my needle and go under the bridge that I wanted in this project, and go back up through bead 2 if it'll cooperate. And my string just got caught on my tripod, so alright, now we're ready to add the next bead, and from here you'll bead 1 at a time. Okay, so I've got 1 bead, and I'm going to go to the next bridge, back up through that bead, and pick up another bead, and back up through the same bridge, and back up through that bead. So now we've got 2 beads on that bridge, and we're going to go to the next bridge. So I'm going to finish putting these beads on, and I'll come back for the next row. I'm about ready to put on my last bead. And I'm going to use the same process. And go up through the bridge. And then up through that bead. So now we've got 10 beads on our second circle, and as before we need to make the bridge between the first bead and the last bead. So I'm going to go, if I can hang on to my needle, go back down through the first bead, and then back up through the last bead. And now we're ready for the second row. And I'm just trying to get that tail where it's out of the way. Okay, now the way we're going to put the beads on the last row, I'm sorry, on the third row, is again we're going to take 2 beads to start the row. And just remember this pattern, 2 1 2 1 2 1, and that's the way you're going to work. You're going to put 2 beads on the first bridge, then 1 bead on the second bridge, then 2 beads on the third bridge, 1 bead on the fourth bridge, and so forth, and that will give us 15 beads, and they will be pretty well evenly spaced using that pattern. My apologies for my camera angles. This could be really tough. So I'm going to go through bridge 1, and that's going to attach these 2 beads to that bridge, and then back up through bead 2, and now we've got the first 2 beads on the third row. And I'm going to pick up 1 bead, and go through bridge 2, and then back up through the bead. I apologize, my string keeps getting caught on my camera stand, and that can be a little bit tough when you're trying to film. So there's 3 beads. So now we've only got the 1 bead on the 1 bridge. So we got 2 beads on on the first bridge, 1 bead on the second bridge, and so now we're going to do 2 beads on the third bridge, but 1 bead at a time. Okay, so now I've got all 15 beads done in a circular brick stitch, 5 in the center, 10 on the second row, and 15 on the third. And just like on the second row, we've got to close the last bead and the first bead together. So you see, I just am going back through bead 1 and through the last bead. Okay, so I've trimmed my tail off, and now all I have coming from my work is this is now my working thread. Okay, now I've watched a number of other crafters. When they're making rings, they start from the outside and work their way in. I had a difficult time with that, with this particular ring. So I started in the middle and worked my way out, because I found when I worked from the outside to inward that I started losing track of where those middle beads were, and they were harder for me to see and harder for me to find with the needle. And there again, that could just be a matter of aging eyes. So, but anyway, but just for me, it was easier to start in the middle. If it's easier for you to start on the outside and work in, then by all means do that. So I'm just going to take my needle and come up through one of the middle beads, and I'm going to be working towards the outside edge of the base. Okay, and now I'm going to pick up 3 beads, and I do try to do my best to keep them as even in size as possible, because like as I stated earlier, these seed beads can be a little irregular. I'm sorry, I'm going to pick up 4 beads. Now if you wanted to have your petals or your star points all one color without an accent bead on the end, like these have the gold accent bead on the tips of the star points or petals. But if you didn't want that, you would just pick up, instead of just picking up 4 beads, you would pick up 5 of the same color. But I am going to be doing an accent bead, so I'm going to pick up that accent bead now. And I'm going to bring those down to my base, and now I'm going to go back through the 4th white bead. And we've got 1/2 of our star point or flower petal done, and I'm going to go back and pick up 3 white beads and bring those down to the base. And now I'm going to go back through the same bead that I came up through, hopefully. Of course, I just stabbed myself a little bit there, but that's okay, it didn't hurt. And now we have petal or star point 1. And so that's what I'm going to do. There's 5 beads in the center, so I'm going to do 5 petals, all with the same. I'm going to pick up 4 white beads and 1 black bead, and then go back through the 4th white bead, and then pick up 3 more of the white beads, and then down through the same bead that we started out of. And I'm going to do that for the 5 center petals, and I'll be back. So here I've got the first 5 star points or petals attached, and just to secure this last petal, I'm just going to go back through the bead again, just to really secure, so it stays nice and tight for me. I don't want it to be floppy. Now that I've gone through those beads a couple of times, they're getting a little bit harder to pull thread through. Okay, so that'll keep that nice and tight. And now I'm going to go ahead and attach my center decorative piece. And I would probably use, I mean, considering that this is fairly large, I would use something bigger in the middle, but this, I'm only working with beads this large just for demonstration purposes. I ordinarily wouldn't make a ring quite this big, but I just figured it'd be easy for you all to see on camera. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my decorative bead, and this is where you could really have fun. I mean, you can use any color combination of beads that is aesthetically pleasing to you. You can use whatever decorative bead in the middle that you like, that looks good to you. So I'm just placing a gold bead in the center. And I'm going to go back and okay, so now I just went through the bead, and now I'm going through another one of these middle beads and bringing my needle towards the back of the beadwork. Okay, so now that I've got that attached, now I'm going to start working on my next row of petals. And what I'm going to be doing is working with the next row where we have 10 beads. And what I'm going to do is come up and bring my needle back to the front, come up through one bead. And now this is where you would start to bring your design together, whether or not you had store points or petals stacked on top of each other like this, or staggered like this. This is where you make that decision, and this is where you would start to make that happen. So if I wanted all the petals to kind of line up, then I would look at this bead and see which two beads behind it. So you can see these two beads would cause my petals to line up if I was to use these two beads to start the next row. If I wanted it more staggered, then I would start the next row of petals with this bead, which would make it more in between these two petals. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is go ahead and do this one staggered because I like that look. And this is going to be the exact same process. The only difference is we're gonna, instead of coming up through one bead and down through the same bead, this time we're going to go up through one bead and down through the bead next to it. And this is also, with this row, you add beads to make the petals a little bit larger. So with these, we started with 4 beads and then a decorative bead and then 3 beads coming down. So for this one, instead of doing our 4 beads in one color, we're going to do 6 beads in one color and then our decorative bead. Okay, so I'm going to pick up 6 white beads and 1 black bead. And we're going to do the same thing. Bring them down to our base, and then I'm going to go through bead number 6, or back through bead number 6. As such. Okay, and now I'm going to pick up 5 white beads. Okay, and now I'm going to, see, this is the bead that I came up through, so I'm going to go to the next bead over, and that's going to be the one I'm going to go down through. And now we've made our first petal on the neck, on the second row, and I'm going to go back through that bead again, because this is where we want to start making sure that we get those petals nice and tight so they don't flop over. We want them to stand out. Okay, so now I've got that secure, and now I'm going to go just to the next bead over and come up through that bead, and do the same thing. I'm going to load 6 white beads and a black bead, then go back through the 6th bead, and then pick up 5 more beads and go through the next bead over on the base. And I'm going to continue to do that until I have 5 petals, and then I'll be back. So I've got all 5 star points or flowers on the 2nd row, and so now we're ready to start the last row. And again, you know, if we were wanting to keep the star points lined up, then we would want to, you know, start in holes, you know, that would make that happen, or we can do them staggered as I'm doing this time. So I'm coming up, this is the last petal I did, and so I'm coming up through this bead that's kind of in the middle of it, and this will be the middle of that, the petal that I'm fixing the bead, and then we'll be going down through this bead. So we're going to be incorporating 3 beads in here, and what that'll do is put the star point here, which will stagger it in between. So this time, the last time we picked up 6 white beads and 1 black bead. This time we're going to pick up 8 white beads and 1 black bead. You see our flower petals have gotten a little bit larger each time. Okay, we're almost there. Still takes me a while to pick beads up. I'm hoping that improves with time. Alright, and 1 black. So in the same manner, I'm going to go through bead number 8, or back through bead number 8. For some reason we're not cooperating at the moment. Okay, there we go. Okay. Get where you can see that. Okay, so we've come up through this bead. We're going to skip this bead and come down through this bead. So we've now got 3 of the base beads involved in 1 star point or petal, and the same way we did the 2nd row, I'm going to go back through that bead to really tighten that petal down so that it stands out and doesn't flop over. And my line that I'm working with, my beading line, is starting to, I've gone all around this design with it, so it's getting kind of gnarly. Let's start at the very next bead with our next petal, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to string on 8 white beads or clear beads, then the black bead, come back through bead 8 and string on 7 more beads, and then I'm going to skip a bead and then come down through the next one, wrap it a couple of times, and then move to the next petal. And so I'm going to do that until I have 5 petals around, and I'll be back. Okay, so now I've finished putting all 5 petals on the outside, and I've decided that, I mean, even though this is just for demonstration purposes, it's still just, it's been bothering me, that poor one lone little old bead in the middle. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put a couple of more beads in the center, because this actually, even though it might be a little large for a ring, would make a nice brooch or even something to attach to a hair clip. So I actually can find some uses for this, so I do want it to look finished. So I'm just coming back up through the center with my thread, and I'm going to put a couple more of these gold beads in the middle to kind of hide that center. I just think it'll look better. It'll look more polished and finished. And to make the band, all I did was use some of these same clear seed beads, the size 6/0, and some stretch cord, and just attached them to my base. And that's really, I was going to demonstrate that, but it's really so simple. It's just a matter of running through beads on the base and then just tying all, you know, measuring it to your finger to see how many beads you need it to be so that it fits nicely and comfortably around your finger. Again, you can use so many different colors. You can do like I did in all the petals in different colors, or star points in different colors, or you can do them all in the same color, or a variation of you could start, like, say maybe the center in light blue, and then the middle row of petals in a medium blue, and the outside row of petals in a dark blue. And the combinations here are endless. There's just no end to the different combinations you can make for this ring. So this turned out so nice, I decided to go ahead and make a bracelet with it. So what I did was took some of this 0.8 millimeter clear stretch cord, and I cut a pretty good size length of it, probably about 2 feet of it, and I threaded each end to a needle. And then what I did was came up, trying to get where you can see that, came up through this bead that's between, or in the middle of this flower petal, and then came up through the bead that's in the middle of this flower petal, because they don't have a lot of string work in them, so it was easier to come up through with this thick stretchy cord. And to make the band for the bracelet, what I'm going to do, if I can get control of my needles here, is I'm going to take 2 of the black seed beads on each needle, and it's a lot easier to do with my right hand than my left hand. There we go. And I'm going to take one of the clear whitish colored seed beads, and oops, I lost a bead. Yep. Sorry about that. Go ahead and get another one here. There we go. Okay, so I've got 2 black on each and 1 of the whites on here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull them down onto my stretch cord. And now I'm going to take the left needle and go back through that white bead, this stretch cord is so thick it's a little bit difficult to get through the bead twice, but it does eventually make it. Okay, and then just pull until we work everything down. And it's going to look like that into place. And this will go fairly quick to make a bracelet band. So once I get that completed, I'm going to show you the finished product. Well, here is the finished bracelet, and I gotta say, I'm really tickled with the way it came out. Made this just really to show you guys how to make that top for a ring, and I didn't expect to end up making a bracelet out of it. So yeah, anyway, if you have any questions, please just email me or message me here on YouTube or comment below. Thanks so much for watching.